Welcome to the MacMillan Report. I'm Marilyn Wilkes, your host, and our guest is Thomas Thurston, who is the Director of Education and Public Outreach at the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition at the MacMillan Center. He has organized several collaborative international institutes for teachers in Ghana, the United States, and the UK. Today we'll talk with Tom about the recent workshop series he developed called Teaching Transatlantic Histories, Models for Collaboration Between U.S. and African Teachers and Classrooms. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Marilyn. It's great to be here.
Let's begin with an overview of the workshops.
Sure.
Tell us about them.
Right. Well, we have 10 teachers from the Connecticut, Greater New Haven area, 10 from Johannesburg, South Africa, and 10 from Sierra Leone, who are working together in teams. I have 20 teachers in Connecticut. Half that group is working with 10 teachers in Sierra Leone. The other half is working with 10 teachers in South Africa. Part of it involves traveling to each other's countries. So we just returned from Johannesburg in June, where we met with our teachers there, and we're planning a trip to December. But most of it is building classroom-to-classroom collaborative learning opportunities. So part of the reason for the travel is to get the teachers a chance to learn more about each other's countries' histories, to get to know each other, to visit classrooms when possible, all those sort of things.
I am curious about how the teachers were chosen.
Sure.
Did you handpick them? What was the process?
No, I did. I wanted to avoid handpicking because then I have my favorites.
Okay.
Here in Connecticut, I contacted a lot of educators in the state, someone from the Department of Education, from the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies, from the New Haven Public Schools, and I asked them to give me a list of teachers who they considered their top teachers. I didn't want to broadcast a kind of call for applications because that just could have been overwhelming.
Oh, sure.
And I did a similar thing in both South Africa and in Sierra Leone, where I had people associated with the School of Education at Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, and someone at the University of Sierra Leone who was like a history educator, kind of picked teachers that they'd worked with and that they respected, and it's, I'll have to say, it's been great choices all around. All the teachers are just amazing teachers.
Have all of the teachers been together at one point? Because the two countries in Africa, have all of the teachers met with the teachers from the United States at this point?
Just the group from Johannesburg.
Okay.
We went out there and had a 10-day workshop out there. So that was their first opportunity to meet in person. But the group, the U.S. teachers and Sierra Leoneans, they've connected via WhatsApp.
Okay.
And so they've gotten to know each other, they've shared photos, they've talked about classroom projects, but December, early January will be their first chance to kind of meet face-to-face when we go and visit Sierra Leone.
Okay, so that's later, just
Right.
a couple months ago.
Yeah, we've kind of staggered
Right.
the two groups just to kind of.
Okay, that's exciting. So
things
you must
easy.
be exciting to head back and
Yeah, I'm
have
really
that
looking
workshop.
forward.
I am curious to know what was the impetus behind developing this workshop series?
Well, sure. Well, as you mentioned, we did something similar back in, I think it was 2009 we began. It was a 3-year program with teachers from Ghana, the United States, and the UK. And the focus of that 3-year series was on the transatlantic slave trade, but we focused the kind of education around it by country. So we started in Ghana, and we had professors who were leading the workshop from both the UK, the United States, and Ghana, who co-taught it. And then the second year we did it here at Yale University and brought the groups there. And the third we finished at York in the UK. And we wanted to make sure that this wasn't just an opportunity for Americans or Brits to visit Africa and to have this great kind of experience. We wanted that to be reciprocal, both, and so we made a point to make sure that all the groups were always invited. That was always a tripartite group of teachers. And the same with the education. We didn't want it to be, say, just an American professor or just a UK professor. We wanted to have professors who were speaking at the workshop, organizing the workshop, that represented all three countries. That was important to how we did it. So that was kind of the impetus. And of course, in a lot of ways, it was a great success, but what I felt was lacking was anything built into the program to make it sustainable, to really encourage teachers to continue to collaborate with one another. All these were kind of site-based workshops where a lot of learning happened and a lot of friendships were made, but there wasn't anything happening between classrooms. And it was earlier on a little harder to do that, but also we hadn't built it into the program. Right. And despite that, a lot of the, especially American and Ghanaian teachers, they did that anyway. And to this day, last summer I heard from a teacher down in the DC area who was going out to Ghana, and he was staying with a friend there, that he'd met in the workshop, and they're continuing, him and others are continuing to collaborate between classrooms. So I really wanted to make collaboration the focus of this new series of international workshops.
Okay, and in the workshops, the teachers are creating curriculum. What exactly is the goal of the workshop for the teachers?
Well, part of the goal of the workshop is to familiarize themselves with the various histories of the country. So in Johannesburg, we really focused on apartheid, its origins, its the end of apartheid, and legacies. And so it was both the Americans and the teachers from Johannesburg who were sharing this. We did it at the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. So we wanted them to get a sense of that history, so they all kind of came with that. And in Sierra Leone, it's going to be a history of the nation of Sierra Leone, but with special emphasis on the connections with the United States, in particular here in New Haven. New Haven and Freetown, Sierra Leone are sister cities.
Oh,
and
I
we
didn't
have,
know that.
Yeah, the Amistad memorial that's in front of City Hall.
That's right.
Those captives were Mende people from what's now Sierra Leone. And they know about that history probably as much as or better than students here in the United States. Singpe Bay, who was the leader of the captives, his portrait is at the New Haven Historical Society. He's on the 5,000 Leone note there, and everyone knows that story. So I can hold up a postcard of him that I brought from our museum here, and asked, does anyone know who this is, to a classroom of young students. They all know. I hope the same would go here in New Haven, but I'm not quite sure.
Right. Did you notice, particularly since you have completed the workshop in Johannesburg, when the teachers from the United States worked with the teachers from Johannesburg, were there any differences in perspective in terms of the history? Were there any surprises that you noticed?
That's an interesting question. I think what's surprised me was how engaged the teachers in Johannesburg were with what you would expect to be a kind of history they already knew, and they were, they do know that history. It's something that as history teachers, that's a part of their curriculum. But it just reminded me that there's always something new to hear about it. We had our professor here at Yale University, Dan Magaziner, came, and so he was able to kind of, bring his perspective. But then we had professors from Johannesburg and former activists and others who were also adding perspectives that, in some ways, I think that because it matters, more to teachers in Johannesburg. They were probably more engaged in conversation and questions than the Americans were. I think, and it's not surprising, but we as Americans, it's very easy, it's understandable, it's almost what you expect to happen, but we always hear that history of apartheid and want to relate it with Jim Crow and the civil rights movement, which is all very well and good, but you also have to remember that that's a history in and of itself that is not, important because of its semblance to what happens here.
And so they're high school teachers, is that correct? Or mixed?
Yeah, they're a mixture. We have even some elementary school teachers, so it's a challenge to work with them. But it's a mixture of teachers, all with a focus on history.
Okay, and then moving forward, what do you hope comes out of the workshops ultimately?
Well, what I want to see is them develop classroom activities that can be shared. So the group from the South Africa, Connecticut group are a little further along. They've met each other and they're already developing curriculum, most of which is centered around either for the younger students, cultural aspects like music, dance. Some people are looking at literature and sharing literature to work. And then many are talking about a comparative study of the civil rights movement here in the States and the anti-apartheid movement. And civil rights, in fact, is a subject of study in South Africa. It's important. They see it as important to understanding their history as well. So already we have some fairly well-developed projects are going on. A number of teachers are focusing on the role that young people played in both the civil rights and anti-apartheid struggle, but also in contemporary kind of rights-based struggle, both in South Africa and in the States. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to be presenting some of our preliminary projects at the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies.
Oh,
so
that's exciting!
Yeah, I'm very impressed. I was surprised that my Connecticut teachers were to the point where they said, "Oh yeah, we really want." I'd suggested if you think, and they were all. Out of 10, I think 7 of them are going to be attending.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So yeah, and presenting. So I'm very impressed.
So the curriculum or curricula that they have developed, is that going to be accessible to through the website, and everyone basically in the world can access it and use it if they'd like?
Yeah, that certainly is one of the goals. Is that and part of it is goes to the sustainability, but also how to disseminate, how to spread this. So some of it will be making resources and curricula available online. And some of the way that we want to sustain and disseminate is to encourage partnerships beyond that original group. So that, and usually what I imagine is instead of teacher to teacher, thinking of it as a school to school partnership, so that other teachers, either in social studies or perhaps like English literature, or maybe even math and science, that they're interested. They want to develop relationships, so that we have a stronger relationships. In some ways, there's kind of an institutional relationship between schools, which is, I think, easier to maintain than a person-to-person relation. Someone moves, someone retires, that sort of thing.
Okay, well, we will look for those materials on the Gilder Lehrman Center's website, and the project sounds very innovative and exciting. So thank you for being here with us today and sharing it.
Well, thanks. It was my pleasure.
Okay. For more information about Tom and the Gilder Lehrman Center, please visit our website at macmillanreport.yale.edu. Be sure to join us again for another episode of the MacMillan Report, made possible through funding from the Whitney and Betty MacMillan Center for International and Area Studies at Yale.